Buenas tardes. May the Lord bless you all. And
we finished this morning speaking about the consecration according to St. John Paul II. St. John Paul, the way he writes the consecrations, it's the way that, right there, it's the way he sees the power of consecration.
Today when we finish, we're going to enter into the Basilica so you can pray before the remains of the children. And also, since the remains of Sister Lucia are there, she who was fundamental
for John Paul to do the consecration. For him, it was important. For St. John Paul II, after May 13, 1981, he had to ask that the whole documentation of Fatima to be brought to him. But something beautiful that John Paul had, that he understood that he had better to show. It was those that was the one that had received from Our Lady.
Cuando entremos vamos a rezar en la basílica cada uno en el sector de las oraciones. Está la consagración de 1984, que es casi igual a la de 1982.
There's the consecration of 1984. For those of you to please pray it in silence, profoundly assimilating each word of St. John Paul II. But before we speak about the vision of St. John Paul, about his vision, his Marian vision, we begin with the sacred scriptures. I ask the Holy Spirit, which reading can you give me?
Y vamos a leer un pedacito de Ezequiel capítulo 36.
Ezekiel chapter 36.
Versículo 23.
Verse 23.
Yo santificaré mi gran nombre, profanado en todas las naciones. Os tomaré de entre las naciones. Miren, por ejemplo, nuestro grupo, ¿verdad? De todas las naciones. Os tomaré de todas las naciones, os recogeré de todos los países y os llevaré a vuestro suelo. Yo cuando estaba pensando en esto decía,
when I was reading this, every time Our Lady has appeared, it's our soil. And when it's the house of the mother, is also the house of the children. This reading, I will take you from all the nations. All the nations are represented here. And I will take you. What that means is we've been separated. It's one of the Marian missions to gather all of you together. When he goes to Jerusalem, when Jesus goes to Jerusalem, what does he say? He says he went to pick you up like a hen gets her chickens. That's a Marian terminology, because that's part of the Marian mission, to be able to get the children and to be able to get them together on their soil.
Os rociaré con agua pura y quedaréis purificados. Os purificaré de vuestras inmundicias y de vuestras basuras. Aquí está refiriéndose a la gracia del Espíritu Santo. ¿Qué sucedió cuando Nuestra Señora entró en casa de Santa Isabel?
What happened when Our Lady
derramó el Espíritu Santo en ella y en el niño en su vientre, a tal grado que San Juan Bautista, el precursor del Mesías, saltó de gozo, y Isabel se llenó de gozo, pero también se llenó de los dones y carismas del Espíritu Santo, hasta el punto de reconocer en su pequeña prima, no decirle hola prima, sino que le dijo, ¿quién soy yo que la madre de mi Señor? Eso solo se lo pudo haber revelado ¿quién? El Espíritu Santo. O sea que donde está la Virgen hay el rocío del Espíritu Santo que viene siempre a santificar, a purificar el corazón. Os daré un corazón nuevo. Esta es digamos, la frase principal de esta lectura. El Señor nos va a recoger.
The Lord will pick us up.
Nos va a hacer ser hermanos.
The Lord will gather us and make us brothers and sisters. He will bring us together. In this case, as foil of our Lord. The Lord will pour upon the Spirit. We have been 4 days filled with the Holy Spirit. But what is the purpose of all this? Is the conversion of the heart. Is to give us a new heart. What is the conversion of the heart? Is to give us a new heart. It is a transformation of everything that I feel and do. In reality, when we're speaking about conversion, we're talking about changing directions completely. And we need to change directions. Because by original sin, everything that God had given us, everything that was good, all the graces, they were not lost, but they were distorted. Love was not lost. Love was not lost. Love by its essence is donates itself. The reading was Ezekiel 36, chapter 23. What happens with sin? We become selfish. It's only for me to receive. The Lord has to change the movement of the heart so that we can forget the original sin. But little by little, we must allow the Lord and His Mother and the power of the Holy Spirit to be able to turn that around. Remember when we are in an ocean and we're driving, and all of a sudden you see that the waves, when you're on a boat, the waves start turning you up and down. You have to kind of like feel the water, you kind of like put it straight when you're driving. It's the same thing with the heart. We have to turn it around. The Lord continues in His reading. I will give you a new spirit. A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you. Sometimes we forget this. That's one of the great things about the movie about the Passion of Christ. When He's there, and then who picks up Christ from the floor? His mother. If it's us, we probably left him there. But if our mother knew that she needed to pick him up because he needed to fulfill his mission and do the will of God, but she touches him. Why does he touch her? What does that mean? I'm going to use Cistrana as a model. Jesus falls. He's disfigured. His mother runs to him, and there's the memory of him to go and pick him up. The maternity of Our Lady is permanent. It never ends. It's eternal. With Jesus and with us. When he's able to get up and he's at the level of his mother, he touches her and he says, I do everything new. For me, that part of the movie makes me cry. And why does it make me cry? Because she's seeing the new He has made. She's seeing the new things that He makes, His own immaculate mother. She is the first fruit, the fruit that was given before in view of His sacrifice. What was the first thing that Jesus did? His mother. What was the first effect of His sacrifice? His own mother. So to see her and say, I make everything else new, that's what He's saying. I'm going to go to the end to make all of you a new person. When we go in and we kneel to the little children and we see what Our Lady did with these little shepherds, because they only lived 2 years after the apparitions. And remember that St. John Paul II, they made his life impossible. A couple of people, because he was going to beatify these children on the year 2000. All of the children who were beatified or canonized was because of martyrdom. And to tell him why was he going to beatify these children, he said, many do not understand this. Why I have chosen to beatify them if they're not martyrs? Because you grow in holiness. You grow much faster in holiness by being obedient to Our Lady than for all the other years that we may try on our own. Ask the children when you go inside the basilica into their tombs, so that the Lord may give us a new heart, so that we come out of the basilica with something new. I don't like to use the word thing, because we're not things. That we may be new persons, that we may have a new heart, a child heart. All the women ask Jacinta to give us a child heart, a new heart. You know why I just said this? Because I imagined it. There's many different anécdotas. There are different stories. In Mexico, we took a group, and I was speaking about Padre Pro, Father Pro. And then we were there at Saint Charbel. And I was spending 5 days speaking about Father Pro. And when we get there to Father Pro, there's a big picture of Father Pro, because he dies at the age of 33. I see everybody prostrated on the tomb, passing holy cards. And I was like, where did they get all these holy cards? I was knocking the door on the rector, and everybody was getting holy cards. And I was like, where did everybody get the holy cards? And we bought them, Mother. Where'd you buy them? That is Saint Charbel. I know that Saint Charbel must say to Padre Pro, I think that you're making, they're making a mistake, so everybody laughed. Let us ask the men to Saint Francisco and the women to Saint Jacinta and to the servant of God, Lucia, that he may give us a heart like his. These are points of references. These are points of reference. The humility of those children, the docility of those children, the simplicity of those children, the strength of those children to be able to bear the difficult circumstances, even the death threats. There's so much we need to grow in our character, in our personality. We need to allow ourselves to be Marianized. What for? Because if we're more Marian, we will be more Christians. We will be better Christians. Because what can the Blessed Virgin Mary do in a soul? And also to be able to form ourselves in the mold of Jesus. And there, Jesus can do with us what he did with her. If we enter with her, what is he going to do with us? Everything. So there's only one mold for Jesus, and that is called the Blessed Virgin Mary. The only thing that comes out of the Blessed Virgin Mary is the fruit, and the fruit is Jesus. I will give you a new spirit, and I will take out the flesh. A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you. And I will take out of your flesh the heart of stone, and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you. Sometimes there's abuses against the body. We have to be honest. There's also a lot of commodities or comfort that we put into our body, because our flesh is the product of our disordered affections within us. But he says that I will take out your heart of flesh. You're sitting on stone, right? Doesn't it feel hard? Well, imagine that the Lord says that sin makes our heart to be like that. Hard. I don't know, but I can't stand to be sitting down on stones. I think it's very difficult to do. And you know what it is that he's comparing our hearts to this hard floor? And that's what the Lord wants to do. He wants to take us our stony heart, our heart, and to give us a new heart. That's why he says to enter into the school of my heart, and I will give you a meek heart. So when he's speaking about a heart of flesh, he's speaking about a meek heart. And like, for example, this big tree, the humility, docility, obedience, to be able to abandon yourself to the will of God. And the humility is another tree. From the humility comes the hospitality, the tenderness, to be able to sacrifice yourself. So many different ramifications that can come. One of the virtues is the mother of all the virtues. I will put within you a new spirit, and I will take out of your flesh the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. The word of the Lord.
Sister Ana, you have my paper?
I'm going to speak a little bit because I want to be open for questions. This is a very long topic, and for me it's very long. Because John Paul is John Paul. Saint John Paul the Great. The great became small. It is important for at least to get to know the vision which St. John Paul II had of the Marian consecration, to be able to understand why he wrote this consecration. First of all, let us go back to what we have said a million times, but one more time, it's just one more. St. John Paul II, what was the most important that he considered, the two pillars that he considered of the Blessed Virgin Mary? First and foremost, the filial love to the Blessed Virgin Mary. I am the son, I am the daughter of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Today the Son gave us in the morning a new title, that we are the children of God, we're the sons of God, the daughters of God. And here comes the second chapter, and it's that we're the sons and daughters of a mother. We are not orphans. We have a father and we have a mother. Therefore, we need to promote. We need to, with tenderness, with total surrender, with consecration, with giving of ourselves totally and abandoning ourselves completely. Just like the little baby Maria is in the hands of Sister Anna. But look at the baby. She's totally dependent of whatever Sister Anna does. Abandon ourselves totally in the arms of Our Lady, who she knows what she's doing. And that filial love, it's developing in a very beautiful way in the life of St. John Paul II. That filial love, he learns it in his family. Brothers and sisters, parents, the love of the Lord and the love of the Blessed Virgin is learned at home. From the first moment. Looks like Maria is going to be the example today of so many different examples. Maria doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know what the talk is all about. She doesn't even know she's in Fatima. But her soul does know it. But her soul is receiving all the graces, just the same way we are all receiving it. How beautiful it is, which is not easy to get out. It's beautiful how Annie, ever since she was already, before she was born, she was already in the Holy Land. How beautiful that the children, since they are babies, they can go to these holy places so that they can be filled with the Eucharist. They may not be able to understand this, but the soul is the same and receives everything. And this is, even though she may not remember, but she will see pictures. But her soul was already sealed by everything that's happening here. That filial love of John Paul II towards the Virgin Mary began. He was little. Ever since he was little, especially in his home, he began this devotion to Our Lady. It was so important in his home to have this devotion to Our Lady that every afternoon would pray the Rosary as a family. He would pray the Rosary before the image of Our Lady of Perpetual Sorrows. So let us ask him to help us. And also remember that he learned how to pray the Rosary and to pray it in family and before an image. It looks as something very natural, something very simple. Nevertheless, this is forming him because of what he was going to be in the future. The Pope. He established the first Saturdays in the Paul VI Center. Before any event, he would pray the Rosary. And why is this? Because he learned this since he was a baby. He learned to do this from his home. The love that John Paul II had for the images. And it's not just a love that you would just see an image and say, oh, how beautiful. No, she was his mother. And he would see in an image the Blessed Virgin Mary, who was reflected there. With the tenderness that he had, the first thing that he would do before he would go to any country, he would go to the first Marian shrine, and there he would go and consecrate the country. That's where I want to consecrate the country. And bring me the patroness. And like, for example, it's the same thing that they did here. Bring me the Virgin of Fatima so we can take it to Rome. Similar to that. That filial love was developing. He loses his mother at 9 years old. At 9 years old, he goes to the church and he says to her, to the image, I don't have a mother here on earth, and from now on you will be my mother. Logically, those simple words of St. John Paul II are a consecration. I don't have a mother, now you're my mother. And here becomes another stage. And here many things start developing in St. John Paul II. And I'm going to tell you a few things of what was developing in Carol Wotali. And when I say develop, what I mean is the hand of Our Lady forming the heart of John Paul II. Responsibility, loyalty, fortitude, service. So much so that he would go every Friday to Calvaria. For those of you that have gone to Poland, you know that Calvaria is Calvary. That's why it's called Calvaria, because it means Calvary. Every time I go there, I only reach the 7th step because each step is very hard to do. And he would do it every day. And then, after doing what? After the whole morning, he had spent cleaning all the garbage from the house of his mother. Therefore, the great St. John Paul II learned how to love and serve Our Lady by picking up the garbage of her sanctuary, of her shrine. How beautiful, right? So there, in that same place, something very important had to happen, and which marked his life and attention. It marked our life, because by making the sign of the cross, he was a sports person, not like us. And then when he goes to doing the way of the cross, he gets to the crucifixion in one of the many Fridays. He was probably around 19 years old. And when he reaches the crucifixion, and he's seeing the image of Jesus Christ crucified in the hands of Our Lady, he's meditating with the scriptures at that moment, reading John 19. And when Jesus says, Mother, here's your son. And then to the son, Son, here's your mother. And he has done this every Friday. But at that particular moment, he had a mystical grace to be able to understand profoundly those words and to feel, as he says, and to feel as being close to Our Lady as St. John, and for Jesus to direct him his gaze, and for him to say, here's your mother and here's your son. So here begins another phase of the relationship of St. John Paul II with the Blessed Virgin Mary. So as you can understand, I should do the same thing as St. John. I should be able to bring her to my home like St. John. But not only to take care of the house, but to make of my heart the house of the Virgin. And to take totus tuus, take the theme totus tuus, which means I'm all yours, Mary. Because it's the same time that he gets to know this, and I cannot pronounce this because in Polish, but it was called, I don't know. As a matter of fact, they even want to open the cause of beatification. He forms a group which was called the Living Rosary, and St. John Paul II forms a part of this group. And here he begins to know more profoundly the story of Saint Maria Grignon of Montfort, because this person gives them the book of the true devotion to Mary. He recognizes that there's a moment in life that he felt so Marian that he was scared of putting Jesus to the side, which happens to many Catholics, right? Because we don't understand, very simply. But the Lord allowed him to go through that so that the Lord may help him to be able to live that life, so then he can help us live it. And the question would be, is like, maybe I'm abandoning Jesus if I love Mary more? Of course not. And by the way, at the same time that all this is happening, here comes the Nazi invasion. For the Nazi invasion, his brother had died already. He was a doctor. He died of an epidemic. And the only one alive was his father. Now, the father of St. John Paul II, the father of St. John Paul II, if it was up to me, I would canonize him, because he was a role model. A male role model, St. John Paul II. He says, the first seminary I lived in with my dad at home, when sometimes he would get in the middle of the night to get water, he would find his dad kneeling down, kissing the rosary in his house. This father lived for his son and to work. With the Nazi invasion, we all know that many died. Many of St. John Paul II died miraculously. And we have to say it just like it is. Miraculously, Carol Wojtyla was kept alive. And why was he kept alive? Because God had great designs of mercy for him through his mother. As a matter of fact, that's why I say that St. John Paul II, that's why I believe in the gifts of invisibility. And I have to say that that should be a gift, because when the Nazis went into his home, all of them went into his house. They checked everything. They checked every place in his home and didn't find him. They didn't see him. So Our Lady made him invisible. Our Lady covered him with her mantle and she protected him. And just like that, also remember, one day he was coming from his work. He was not sent to a concentration camp. He was coming, and a truck with Nazis ran him over. He was unconscious. They thought he was dead. And he narrates in his book that a woman picks him up. A woman he never had met takes him to the hospital. He was there many days unconscious, and when he awakes, he looks for this woman, to thank her. He searches all of Krakow to look for her, and he didn't find her. Who was this woman? We can imagine that it was the Blessed Virgin Mary. Then, from that filial love, from that understanding that I am her son, she is my mother, comes the understanding that the witness, the testimony of Jesus on the cross is the Blessed Virgin Mary. But those 7 words, the last one, before saying everything is finished, everything has been accomplished, that what he gives us, he's giving us his life. He's giving us the sacraments after he's dead by the piercing of his heart. But before he dies, he wants to give us the greatest treasure that he has on earth. And the greatest treasure that he has on earth is his mother. And someone asked me once, and why did he want to do that? Well, I can't speak in the name of Jesus, but I can tell you one thing. Who was the recipient of the maternity of Our Lady? Who was the one that received all the effects of the maternity of Our Lady? Jesus. He knew what our Blessed Mother was as a mother. He knew what it was to have her as a teacher. Scripture tells us that Jesus was growing in grace and stature but it's not a stature of height. A stature means human growth, because in his humanity he had to develop just like all of us. But he does so in the school of Our Lady. So Jesus does not want to leave the church without the effect of the maternity of Our Lady, because the church was going to be born on that day. Just like Maria, the baby, she's very small, and she needs a mother who will be able to remind her all these things. And who was the one that kept all these things in her heart? The Blessed Virgin Mary. Somebody that needed to be able to take out the apostles out of their own fears. How many times did she probably have to tell them, come, come, come? What did Jesus say to you? What did Jesus say that it was going to happen on the third day? That he was going to rise from the dead, then he will rise from the dead. Who's the one that sustained the faith of the apostles where they were living the dark moments? It was the Blessed Virgin Mary, and that's why she appears to Saint James as Our Lady of the Pillar, and at the pillar of faith. But not just now, since the beginning of the church. Jesus knew that the apostles had 3 years of being with him, being close to him. That was it, 3 years. But who is the one that knew everything about him? The Blessed Virgin Mary. But even though it was only 3 years, they forgot everything. I mean, we can see this Philip, wasn't it? Philip was asking, show us the way of the Father. Let me tell you, Jesus was very patient, because I would have gotten Philip and I would have hung him. And he says, Philip, but you've been with me for 3 years, and you still don't know me? You know that the Lord doesn't know that even though they have seen miracles together, resurrections, even though they have fallen asleep, even those that saw all the time he was rising people from the dead. I mean, think for a moment how we all are. And his mother wanted for his mother to do whatever he did with us. Whatever his mother did with him, he wanted it for her to do with us. And he wanted her to be able to keep alive the word of Jesus, to keep it alive in the heart of the church. And the Blessed Virgin Mary continues to do this, keeping alive the word of Jesus in the heart of the church. How do we know that an apparition is real? Because it never contradicts the gospel, and it never contradicts the magisterium of the church. In other words, she comes to remind us of what Jesus has said to us. Therefore, she continues to do, through the history of the church, what she did from the beginning, and she will continue to do it until the end. Therefore, once he becomes a child, and he realizes himself as a child, and he knows that he's going to be the recipient of all this. He knows he had to give all this love, and he knew that he had to be filled of love and responsibility. The gift, when you receive the gift, if you don't respond to it, if you don't answer it to it without responsibility, not only do you lose it, but it also gets corrupted. And that's what happens to us sometimes. And we have seen so many, we have received so many gifts, you know, and look at this. But then we're full, and we're already, after we're full, what happens? Where do we need to go? You have to go and get it all out because you're full. That can happen spiritually as well. So for St. John Paul II, the gift has a serious responsibility. If we truly believe that the gift has a serious relationship, that the gift has a serious responsibility, then the desire of being responsible surges in him the understanding, the adequate understanding of the human being to the mother, to the love of the mother. And what is that response? That adequate response to consecrate yourselves. And look at this, all this that he lives. Then he places it when he's elevated to the pontificate. But then he gives this to the church. He deposits this to the church. He had already done it as a bishop, as an archbishop, and then as a cardinal in Poland. That we should never get tired of giving thanks for the pontificate of St. John Paul II. He deposited everything that he lived as a child until that 16th of October. And he is putting on his white cape. I wish I would have been there from a little corner and watch what he was doing. Everything that he was able to understand from the Blessed Mother. Everything that he knew of the Blessed Mother. Everything that he lived with the Blessed Virgin Mary. He put it in a document, a magisterial document. In the Mother of the Redeemer encyclical. And he says at the beginning of the encyclical, this encyclical is the fruit of my theological reflection of all that I have lived in my life with the Blessed Virgin Mary. And this is where he speaks about the Blessed Mother being a living testimony of Christ, and that she is a living testimony and example to every disciple. And that's why I say to myself, Lord, where are those disciples that skipped John 19 when he said, here's your mother? The Lord didn't say, if you want to choose her as a mother, I'll give it to you. And if you don't want her, that's fine. That's not what the gospel says. The gospel says, here is your mother. And when he says, here is your mother, what he's saying is, here's the man made flesh. When we say, here it is, it has a strong connotation. There's no option. I give her to you. If you are my mystical body, then you have to take her. If you say that you are my church, then you have a mother. If you say you're a Christian, then you have a mother. And if you're her child, then you obey her. And all of this is the Marian consecration. The Marian consecration is to tell her, I am your daughter, I am your son. I am all yours. Totus tuos. A little bit of me. Not only when I go on pilgrimage, no. There are 4 phrases that summarize the whole true devotion to Mary, the book. I'm summarizing the whole book for you. 4 phrases which mark the life of St. John Paul II. I am all yours, Mary. All. And St. John Paul II, just like a good Polish person, how much we need to learn from the Polish people. It is a role model, the Polish people, for all of us. When they say everything, when they say all, they mean all. And that's what he said, I am all yours, Mary. He didn't say, oh, well, I don't feel well today. I don't feel like I'm being devoted today. I don't feel like praying the rosary. No, I only do this when I see a beautiful Marian face. No, it's totally, it's all of it. I don't belong to myself anymore. I don't have anything for myself. I am all yours, Mary. And for us to not even doubt the fact that all means all, the second phrase, which summarizes 3 chapters of the true devotion, and that everything I have is yours. So here's the greatest question right here that we must ask ourselves. What do I have? If we start making a list of everything we have, we will never finish, right? But first of all, we have clothes. Thank God. We have the privilege of being able to sit here next to the basilica. That we have families. Imperfect, but you have it. that we have problems. Of course, but because we're alive. Because the dead ones don't have problems. Of course, everything that we have. All the merits that we have accomplished and have achieved, brothers and sisters. When you're kneeling, when you're praying, when you're tired, when you can't go on anymore, all of that, you give it to our mother. And she, who is the greatest treasure on earth, from heaven, she can do whatever she wants with all of this. What does a son? What does a husband say to his wife? Mom, do we have French fries? Mom, do we have potato chips? What does the husband say? Ask your mother. And what does the mother do? Goes to the kitchen and starts looking for all those potato chips. So the mom goes to the kitchen, opens all the different cabinets to find all the different things that she buys from the supermarket, and she finds the potato chips, and you give it to the kid, and the kid comes out very happy. Well, that's exactly what happens in heaven. The treasure of all the graces. The treasure of all the merits. The one that has the most humongous kitchen is the Blessed Virgin Mary. And when we say, Lord, please help me. Help me, I have this problem. I need money. The Blessed Virgin Mother comes and says, Mother, please find someone that can donate to this person. The Blessed Virgin Mary goes to the kitchen in heaven and puts in the place of this person and says, here, donate to this person. That's what happens to all of us. We multiply the rosaries, right? Things happen to us because the Blessed Virgin Mother knows what is it that's lacking. And where do we see this? In the wedding at Cana. She knew what was lacking. She didn't make the miracle. She went to her son. And her son tells her, what do I have to do with you, woman? He says, my hour has not come. You know what it is? For the God-made man to tell him, the hour has not come yet. And what does the Blessed Virgin Mary does? She kind of like asks her son to speed up the first miracle. And what does she says? Okay, bring empty jars. And she says to the servants, do whatever he tells you. And she continues to tell us, do whatever she tells you. Therefore, brothers and sisters, the consecration enters us into a new relationship with the Blessed Virgin Mary. Everything I have is yours. I have problems. Mother, they're yours. I have needs. Mother, they're yours. I have joy. Mother, they're yours. Then the third phrase, which I also have to summarize for you 3 chapters of the book. The third phrase, I receive you as my all. What was the first phrase? I am all yours, Mary. And then says, I receive you as my all. What is he doing there? Well, St. Louis de Montfort and St. John Paul II summarize it. What He's doing is the interchange of hearts. What Jesus did. Mother, here is your mother. Mother, here is your son. The son says, I give you myself completely to you, and because you are my mother, I take you as my own, and you have to come and live with me in my home. To be and become and to come and live in the interior of my entire life. And everything I wanted to be under your authority. And in the end, it ends the same phrase that we all have to say. In order to live the spirituality and this consecration, we have to ask Our Lady to give us her heart. Because the one that has lived totally and completely consecrated to God, the one that has been all of God, and the one that has donated all of God is the Virgin. So she ends up saying, give me your heart. That whole phrase summarizes the life of St. John Paul II. And to make the last point, St. Maximilian Kolbe, very important too, in St. John Paul II. Even though for such a short time, St. John Paul II was 21 years when St. Maximilian died, but he was very known in Poland. So what does he learn from St. Maximilian? From St. Louis of Montfort, he learned everything that I just shared with you. But what does he learn from St. Maximilian Kolbe? That all who consecrate themselves to the Blessed Virgin Mary, all their works, because they're not theirs, is the Blessed Virgin Mary, they are maximized by the powerful maternity of Our Lady. What an army of 30 people can do before, one person can do it if you're totally consecrated to Our Lady. So please be aware that this reality, this personal reality of consecration, when Carol Wojtyla is elevated to episcopacy, he takes her to the episcopate, and he takes as a motto, totus tuus. And what does he begin to do? He begins to understand the power of the maternity of Our Lady. He begins to ask the Episcopal Conference of Poland to consecrate Poland to the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Queen, in a very, very difficult time. And the Episcopal Polish Conference make an act of consecration. And guess what happens? That at the moment he says, and I consecrate Poland to the power of your queenship, her stick fell. And where did it fall? In the hands of Carol Wojtyla. As if Our Lady was saying, this is the one that has been chosen to move forward, move ahead, my kingdom. So he begins to build a new church in Nova Huta. And then Carol Wojtyla said, God is in the center of the entire city. What does the world need today? Men and women that are just like St. John Paul II. You want a city without God? That's not what you want. You want a city with God. And what else he did in Krakow? He said, we are going to build a church, and we're going to build a church which is big. And many of you want this world nowadays, a world without God. And you know what St. John Paul II used to do? They would go every night carrying small little pebbles to build up a wall. And then the communists would come, and then they would break it. What did he do? The next day, the same thing. Would bring up rocks to go and build a wall, and what would happen after he built it? The communists would come and break it again. What happened the same thing? The same day, he builds up a bigger one. And then the communists break it again. Who got bored first? Obviously the communists. That is the type of Christians that we need today. Just like St. John Paul II. Who will form their characters. That is why the Blessed Virgin Mary. And sometimes I have to really smile when I hear such phrases as this. Marianization is only for women. Marianization makes you have a sweet character. And I said to them, I don't recognize and I don't know of any saint who was Marian that was a weak person. As a matter of fact, look at Saint Maximilian Kolbe. To be able to live in that concentration camp after living in the Immaculate, the city of the Immaculate, and now to live in the concentration camp, I don't know of someone more strong in his faith and more Marian than him. I don't know any saints who are not Marian, who are not strong. The city of the Immaculate was not buildings, it was his heart. And the consecration of the Blessed Virgin Mary is to make the city of the Immaculate in our hearts, brothers and sisters, to be able to form us and to allow her to do everything that she wants with us. This is when the children ask by Our Lady, what is it that you want to do? You want to offer yourself as sacrifices for the conversion of sinners? And what did they do? They said yes. They didn't even say, let me think about it. They just went forward and said, yes, we want to do it. And the Blessed Virgin Mary told them, yes, you will have much to suffer. But they didn't go back on their word. They didn't say, oh no, because we have to suffer, we can't do this. No. They stayed up and stood up until the end. The Marian consecration forms great apostles to be able to combat the greatest battles that we're facing today. And that is why the Blessed Virgin Mary asked here in Fatima for the consecration as a condition to be able to accomplish the triumphs that she needs in the world, including Russia. Now, Russia is nothing compared to how we are. I mean, look at Korea. The entire world is a world without God. The entire world has already been corrupted by the errors of Russia. Now we have the responsibility to be all for our Blessed Mother so she can utilize us. We cannot be afraid that she can use us to do whatever she wants, and for us to tell her, we are yours, Mary, and all that I have is yours.